I'm going to share my favorite Valentine story with you today. But before I get to the story, I was going to talk about a few other things. Of course, I can't think about Valentine's Day without thinking about all the wonderful way we describe love and all the goings-on of love in the mountains of Appalachia. A few days ago on my blog, I shared some of them, so I'm going to share some of them now. Courting, we would say somebody's courting, and that just means they're dating. When I was young, probably 13, 12 years old or something, way too young to be courting, people would always ask me that. Pap had a friend named Jerry, and he was always asking me that. Tipper, are you courting yet? He knew that I was way too young to court, but he knew that I would blush and turn red, and I wouldn't know what to say, so he was just teasing me. And I still hear courting sometimes from older folks. A lot of these have kind of fell by the wayside, but there are some of them I still hear. Sparking, if you're sparking, that means you're dating too. I don't ever hear that one really. Sweet on you, that means you like someone, and I'm sure that one's common in lots of places too. Many of these may be common in other places, but I'm just talking about what I'm familiar with here in Appalachia. And I still hear people say that. I think he's sweet on you. So this one I really like, and I never heard it growing up until I met Matt. And Papa Tony says it, and Matt says it, hein and shein. If they're hein and shein, that means they're hugging and kissing, or they're dating. They're together. They're an item. If you slip off, it means you're going to elope. Now, Granny and Pap eloped. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in a minute. So they slipped off to get married. In the old days, a lot of times they would have what was called a serenade or a chivalry, and that was a loud, noisy celebration that occurred after the wedding, but it was kind of associated with that. And they done some really crazy pranks that, if you ask me, may have went a little too far. I always liked this one. It said about somebody, not in the positive light, but he courts like a stick of wood. So if somebody courts like a stick of wood, that means that they're pretty boring. This one's very common in everywhere too. Is just took up. Two people who started courting or moved in together, I think they've took up with each other. Going steady, another one that's very common all across the United States. Struck on, if you were struck on somebody, means you like them, you like that person. Going with means you're dating. When I was in elementary school, I could never hear going with that I don't think of this little cute story. Of course, we were way too young again to date. Nobody was dating. Nobody was even holding hands or anything. But it was just the thing, and probably, I don't know, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, something like that, to say that you were going with somebody. It didn't really mean anything except that everybody else thought that you were boyfriend and girlfriend. Most of the time, you didn't even really talk to each other. But one of my friends got up the nerve to ask this other boy in our class if she liked him. She was going to ask him if he would go with her. And we were swinging on the swings at the old Martins Creek School. It's not there now. But it was so funny. Even then, I thought it was hilarious, and I've never got over it. She said, "Would you go with me?" And he said, "Well, where are we going?" So he had missed out on all of the girls mostly wanting to go with boys. He said, "Where are we going?" Of course, if you get hitched, you get married. I especially like this next one, Donny Gal. Now, I first heard that, or I didn't hear it, I read it from John Paris in one of his books, and I just loved it. Donny Gal. It's supposed to mean sweetheart. And you can look on the Blind Pig and the Acorn where I've wrote about it before, about the history of the word and what people think and where it come from and all those kind of things. But I just love it. I really like that one. And then kin, K-I-N, to love. And that's one you don't hear now either, but in days gone by. Not even in my lifetime I would have heard that one, but in days gone by. And it's just one that I just love, so I had to include it. And then this one is really still common. If you take a shine to something, that could be someone, like you take a shine. I took a shine to Matt the first time I ever seen him. Or it could be you take a shine to, you started playing tennis or something like that. But mostly said in relationship, like thinking of taking a shine to somebody that you really start to like, and you may fall in love with them. So those are just a few to mention, and I'm sure there's tons of others. So please leave a comment and share some of them with me. Now, when it comes to Valentine's Day, Matt and I have never really celebrated it very much. We're kind of funny, kind of a funny couple that we rarely remember our anniversary. So our anniversary's in August, and a lot of times when the girls were growing up, that would be the day school started. And I would be like maybe getting them ready for school or thinking about the significance of it the day they went, and I'd be like, oh, today's our anniversary. Or maybe I'd be writing a check somewhere and be like, today's my anniversary. And so many times over the years, either Matt or me have called each other and said, hey, did you know it was our anniversary? So we're not those people that really get upset about each other not remembering it. I think we both just always thought every day, we should act like every day is our anniversary, and we get along really well and share a lot of love. So I think that's how we look at it. Of course, there's nothing wrong with celebrating those wonderful anniversaries, and I really admire the people that do take the time to really do something special. We just typically don't do that. And the same for Valentine's Day. We don't really do much for it. Over the years, you know, certainly Matt's got me some cards once or twice. When I worked, one of my last job I worked before I started being a YouTuber, I was shocked that he sent me roses to work. He had never done that. I didn't miss it or think about it or anything, but when I went over, they called me over to the office to get them, I thought, well, I think you might have got, you know, they might have got me mixed up with somebody else, but no, it was from Matt. So that was really a surprise and really sweet. One year when we worked at the college, he did bring me I'm a real practical person, so I like practical things. My whole family knows that about me. Even for Christmas, like there's those jokes about people that, you know, don't never get your wife a vacuum cleaner or something like that. Well, I'm the opposite. I would actually like something like that. Anyway, but there's a little produce stand across from the college, and Matt went over there and bought me a blueberry bush and carried it in and set it on my desk. So that was nice. But one of my favorite things, probably my very favorite of all ever that Matt's done for me for Valentine's Day, which like I said, most of the time we don't really do anything, but I dug through all my stuff to find it. Let's see if you can read it maybe. But when me and Matt were first married, we lived with Pap and Granny, and we both worked. I was actually working at the college then. That's the first time I worked there, and then I stayed at home with Corey and Katie for many years. But Matt worked, of course, and he, in those days, just like he does now, he got up before me and took off. So I come out to crank my car to get ready to go to work, and I guess I was still taking classes in those days too. So probably was going to class and to work, and Matt had taped that to the windshield of my car, so when I got in, it was, you know, it was facing inside. I didn't even notice it till I got in the car and then cranked the car and looked, and there it was. And that's my favorite of all the ones that anything he's ever done. I don't know why, just that he thought to do that. And probably too because, you know, made it seem extra special is because we were at Pap and Granny's, we were living there, we were building our house, getting started. So just thinking about him, like, you know, he did live there, so it was his home then, but it wasn't like your home. So I know he had to prowl around and try to find the paper and find the scissors to cut it and all those kind of things. So I just really thought that was sweet, and that's by far my favorite one. Now, Granny does love to celebrate Valentine's Day, and over the years, she's made so many different things, and she'll get on a kick of making something, and then she'll make something for everyone, for all of us. So you can see here's some of the beautiful flowers she made, kind of Valentine's theme there. She made me one year, she made us all placemats, heart placemats. Aren't those pretty? It's just so pretty. Perfect little heart. And then she's made these little hearts too. I don't remember if they were supposed to be, you laid them on top of the thing or what they were for, but really nice. If you've seen one of my recent shorts, you've seen that she decorates Pap's grave for all the different like kind of holidays and seasons, and so she had made a beautiful Valentine's arrangement for his grave. Another one that I found when I was looking for the placemats was I found this was not necessarily for Valentine's Day, but I just wanted to share it because it's so cute. You can see the heart and the purple and the buttons up here. When Corey and Katie were in high school and they got their first iPad, this was, Granny made these to cover them and to protect them. And I kept it because Granny made it, and it was just in the same drawer where my heart placemats were, but I thought it was really cute too. now I'm going to share my favorite Valentine story of all. But before that, I will tell you that if you go over to the Blind Pig and the Acorn, there's some not necessarily Valentine story, but love stories on there that I've shared over the years. And I'll leave the link to this one. I'm going to just kind of highlight a little bit. I'm not going to tell you the story, but you can go read it. But it's really an interesting love story. And I found out about it from John Paris in one of his books. And it just tells the story of this, like a kind of a stranger coming through, and he falls in love with this girl where he stays at the house. This is in the days of when people rode horses and mules and stuff. Anyway, he ends up marrying the girl, but he's going to take her way far away to Kentucky. He's going to take her, I think it's Kentucky. I might be wrong, but I think it's Kentucky. Anyway, he's going to take her way far away to wherever it was at. And they travel, and it's hard and all that, but she's just so in love with him, and he's so in love with her. It's all great. And then they get to where, it takes forever, but they get to where they're going, and he builds a cabin. They have children. They just have this, she's so happy, and he's so happy, and everything's wonderful. But he does often go off and go hunting and stuff, on long trips. And so he's gone on one of those, and she's out hunting for the cow. In those days you had cows, and you'd let them roam around, and they're going to call it up. And as she's hunting for her cow, she starts hearing something. I think she's hunting for her cow. She may be hunting for something else. Anyway, she hears something. It is a cowbell, and it's her. She thinks, I've heard that cowbell before. I know that cowbell. And it's her daddy's cowbell. So he told her that he was taking her real far away, but he didn't. He just took her like over the next mountain or whatever. And so all those years, she could have been seeing her parents. So I just think that's so horrible. But the story goes that she loved him so much. She was glad now she could see her family again, but that she wasn't mad at him really. I just thought, gosh, that's the craziest love story I've ever heard. So I'll link to that one so you can go over there and read it and see all the stuff I got wrong. That part is true. Can't remember if it was Kentucky or if she was looking for a cow, or if she was just out wandering around and then heard her daddy's cowbell. Anyway, really interesting. So the story I want to share with you, though, is from Granny and Pap. So Granny and Pap did get married. They eloped. They'd been dating 3 months. I have a story where Granny talks about a lot of this, so I will link to that so you can go and hear what she says about it. Anyway, they dated about 3 months, and I guess they decided they were going to get married. And Pap had give her an engagement ring. He gave her this little ring. Let's see if I can get to focus on it where you could see. Give her that little ring, real pretty ring, and she was happy with it and loved it and all that, and was real tickled. You can see the center's gone. She's lost the little diamond out of it. But she was really happy, and they were going to get married, and she thought she was going to plan her a little wedding. Well, one day, Daddy, he convinced her to go to get the marriage license, and they went to Blue Ridge, Georgia to get it. I'm not sure why they went to Blue Ridge. Maybe Pap already had this all planned out, what he was going to do. But on the way back, he started telling her that they should just go. He knew some preachers, and they should just stop at one of those preachers' house and get married now that they were legal. And they stopped at one, and there was nobody there. The preacher wasn't there. They stopped at another one. Preacher wasn't there. And finally, he's like, one more. We'll stop at one more. I know another preacher. And if he's not there, then we'll go on home, and we'll get married at a different time. Well, he was there, so they got married. So Granny said, and I said, well, what did he, and Pat hadn't told her, but he had her wedding band in his pocket. So he had planned all this, obviously. So anyway, they got married and they went home, and Granny Gazzy was really upset, and that's in that other video, so I'll just link to that. But in the end, she turned out she grew to love Pap and realized what a great person he was and all that. So now, fast forward many years until we were living here in Wilson Holler. Pap built the house. I was probably maybe 6 years old when we moved into the house that Granny still lives in. That's the house I was raised in. Well, in those days, like you think about code laws as far as how you build houses and that kind of stuff was not what it is today. And this definitely would not be in code in later years. But at that time, it wasn't as strict. And so Pap and Granny, they're like all of our sinks, instead of going out into the septic tank or whatever, it just kind of went out over the bank and down through the woods. And that's just where it went, drained out. The water drained out that way. Well, Granny lost this. It went down the sink. She dropped it down the sink, and it was just, they took the trap off and all that, and they couldn't find it, and she was really upset about it. And and you know, really mad at herself. She should have been more careful, and I think she had laid them like we all have done, laid them at the edge of the window in front of the sink, and it just fell off and went down the sink, and it was gone. And so she was really mad at herself, and you know, but there was just nothing to do about it. They took out the trap, they couldn't find it. It was just gone, you know, forget it. So many years went by, and one day Pap was down there doing something. I can't remember if that drain, where it did drain out, was got stopped up, or maybe it was even when they were changing the way the drain went or whatever. Anyway, he was down there digging in that muck. I can remember the place. It of course stayed damp and mushy all the time. Now it's not like that at all. There's progress, you know. There's a road, and there's a business and a house and different things there. But he was down there, and I don't remember if Steve was with him or who. I would guess it was Steve. And they were digging, working, and they seen something, and they found this. They found Granny's ring down there all those years later, and it was on Valentine's Day. So it was just perfect. He brought it home to Granny and showed her, and she was so excited, as you can imagine, all those years she had done without it. And he went down there on Valentine's Day digging up all that dirt for whatever reason he was doing, and he found the ring. So Granny was so happy to get it back, and it just made it seem so special that it was actually on Valentine's Day that Pap got to give it to her again. So I hope you've enjoyed this little Valentine's Day video with me talking about my favorite Valentine story and my favorite Valentine that Matt ever gave me. And sharing some of the words. I hope you'll leave a comment, and please share your stories and tell me which words you were familiar with, and all that. I think it's fascinating to learn about other people, and I hope that you continue to drop back by and help me celebrate Appalachia as you're learning about me and my life and my culture.